right. What's up, everybody? I did this yesterday, and I pulled it down because I felt like I left some things out, or I had a little more to say. And so instead of just like going back and like adding another video, I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna do this over again. So what I'm gonna do is kind of want to share a story with you about some things that happened to me, and I hope that it helps somebody, maybe another veteran or somebody who's walked through some hard times or whatever. You know, everybody's got hard times. You know, you don't walk through this life unscathed. So, but some things happened to me recently, and I'd promised God that if He would deliver me from the things that have been going on with my life, just deliver me out of it and fix some of the things that have been kind of crooked and messed up, then I would do everything that I could to let people know, you know. And if I didn't believe in God before, the past several days of my life have certainly proved that. That's for sure. So where do I start? I'm just gonna tell my story. So I grew up in Southeast Texas, just normal dude, I guess. I don't know. Graduated high school 2001. Went on to go to college there for a little bit. Couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life other than just take classes that I didn't really seem to care about at the time and all that stuff. So I tried a few things, moved up to North Texas for a little while. Was gonna go to film school, and thankfully I didn't. I decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna go join the military until I can figure stuff out. And so it's funny because you know, during that time frame, I had made some friends, and you know, they were interesting. College was full of strange people, and strange people doing lots of strange stuff with drugs. And that was interesting. But it kind of drove me, you know, I didn't have an interest in those things. It kind of pushed me away. So I decided to go join the military, and I had a friend of mine named Marcus that was going to go. I went down to the Air Force recruiting office, and because my grandfather retired out of the Air Force, and I was like, you know what, I'll just carry on the family tradition or whatever. Well, I got down to the Air Force, and they were like, yeah, dude, you're a little too fat. So I was like, okay, well. And that following, I don't know, I guess another month or so later, I was at my parents' house, and my brother had a flyer from the Marine Corps saying, hey, if you send in this flyer with your information on it, we'll give you a free pair of sunglasses. And I was like, huh, free sunglasses. So I sent it in. Shortly thereafter, a few weeks later, I got my sunglasses, and followed up by a phone call by Staff Sergeant Riley. Not too long later, I found myself at the Yellow Footprints at San Diego. Graduated from boot camp July 3rd, 2005, and went on into the fleet. During my time in the Marine Corps, I was working on aircrafts. I worked on CH-46 helicopters, and I worked on C-130J aircraft with the VMGR 352, the Raiders. And that was the majority of my time in the Corps, was working with the Raiders. Met a lot of cool people. I'll never trade that experience for anything in my life. learned a lot of hard lessons. But there was a lot of really real stuff that happened that I'm going to get into here in a minute. So, while I was in the Corps, or shortly before I got into the Corps, I met a girl. We dated for a little while, and then decided that we wanted to get serious, and so I decided, well, I'll just ask her if she wants to marry me. So, and I'm sure this is probably a pretty common story in the military. You go in, you don't want to lose your girl, so you ask her to marry you, whatever. Anyway, so I asked this girl to marry me, and we stayed engaged for like 3.5 years. The wedding date kept getting pushed back just because, I guess because it was just because. And the thing kind of fell apart, and in a bad way, pretty bad way. Shortly before my one and only deployment, I deployed to Iraq in January of 2009, late January, and there wasn't really much to worry about out there, as far as I knew. I mean, we had smoke trails from burning trash, and the only thing I really had to worry about was whether or not I was going to get dehydrated or attacked by a camel spider, or if I ran too far down the road, whether or not I was going to get mauled to death by hyenas. Other than that, there wasn't much of anything else to do out there. I was smoking at that point in time. I thought, of all things, I thought it would be a good idea to try and quit smoking in the middle of a combat zone. That was a genius move. So for the most part, Iraq there wasn't much going on. And shortly after we got there, I mean, we weren't even there very long. Maybe 2-3 months, something like that. It had to be 3 months because you have to be in country 90 days to get your medal. So we were there for 3 months, and Obama started the troop withdrawal out of Iraq, but at the same time, they were starting the troop surge in Afghanistan, and so they ripped half of the squadron out of there, and so I was sent forward with our units out to Afghanistan, and it was a whole different ballgame. It was noticeably very green whenever we came in for a landing. There's still a lot of dirt, but there's some greenery. We were stationed at Kandahar, and it was a NATO installation. We had people from all over the world out there. We were stationed out there with Canadians, Romanians, the Dutch, who were allowed to drink beer, and that was a slap in the face, man. We were out there in the middle of a combat zone, and I think the first week we were there, the Dutch were having like this block party or something like that, and we were like, we can't drink because we're from the United States, and we gotta keep our clean image, But my experience in Afghanistan was, and other people might see it differently, but there are other people that I'm still friends with who can testify to some of the things that happened. Within about, I don't know, like right after we landed, we had indirect fire come down and hit the hangar that was, it was probably about 100 yards away from where we were. Might have been less than that. And in terms of what I call Taliban redneck engineering, that's pretty close, man. Because what they do is they like anchor these little rockets up against rocks, and they would run the way they described it to us was that they would run these little buckets. One would have a bucket of ice, and another one was an empty bucket that had battery terminals at the top of them. And so they would poke holes in the bottom, and throughout the day, the ice would melt and the water level would rise. And so whenever the terminals connected, it completed the circuit, rocket fired off, and then it would land wherever it was going to land. And that went on day in and day out, multiple times per day. You never knew when it was going to happen. All you knew is that there is a potential that you could just be walking down the street and boom. I laugh, but I mean, that's the way it was, man. So, I mean, we had that. The first day was it was interesting because we had that. We rode out to the perimeter road, and the first thing we saw was this Romanian light armor vehicle with its turret pointed straight out, because there was like this 50 or 75 foot gap in the fence line. And we asked them what happened, and they said that just last week somebody just blew through the fence with a car bomb. It's just like that, right? Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of how things were. I mean, it was crazy. It was like, to me, it was like the Wild West. I mean, we had these dinky little vehicles. We had these, these Korean buses, and one of them, I remember the drivetrain like fell apart, and we held it together with because we couldn't get parts to replace anything with, so we had to manufacture whatever we were doing. So we took like some 2x4s and some zip ties and connected these the drivetrain, and I think it lasted like an entire day, and then we had to do it all over again until it just wouldn't never work anymore. But a lot of stuff happened out there. Every day was kind of crazy. You never knew what you were gonna get. I remember one day I came walking out of the exchange, and there was this everybody around me was wearing full gear, like, and I just gone to the exchange to get my stuff for the day. You know, it was kind of like my little routine. I would go to the exchange. If they had some Dr. Pepper, I would buy that, and that's why I have this current addiction. I would get that and maybe a can of Pringles that were usually kind of stale, and pack of cigarettes, and then I would head into work. And that's what I would do. And so I walk outside, and I'm in just, you know, regular gear with my M16, and everybody else around me is wearing like flak jackets and helmets and everything, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I look over, and there's this commando. He's just like hauling ass down the road. Excuse my language, but he's running down the road, and he's got what looked like a Condition 1 weapon, which means the magazine's inserted. It was at least a Condition 2 weapon. And he's just running, and I was like, something's going on. Well, so I got back to our housing, and I just put on my gear, and I remember people looking at me like, why are you wearing all this stuff? And I was like, dude, everybody else is wearing this stuff. I'm not gonna be stupid. And sure enough, they told us that there was intel that there was at least 3 suicide bombers on base, and we were to wear full gear until further notice. And I don't remember how many days. It could have been 2, could have been 4. I don't remember. But I remember I remember that it happened. I remember the explosion. You heard it across the base. They took out some Canadians. I believe it was on the north side of the base. And that was just the reality that you lived in. There was like always something happening. I mean, there was one day where a British Harrier came down and the nose gear didn't deploy correctly, and they had several thousand pounds worth of ordnance on it, and the pilot had to ditch the plane. He made a low altitude ejection. He survived. Thankfully, none of the bombs went off. That would have been, I think it was like the first 2,000 or 3,000 feet of the runway were completely useless for, I don't remember, like 2 or 3 days. So all they could fly was helicopters. There was just a lot of crazy stuff. And the thing is that all this time, during all this stuff, we still have every day bombs just dropping down. It's just raining. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't constant. You never knew when it was going to happen. And it happened night and day. And you just had to get used to it. Not to mention the fact that everything else in your life, you still have a family back home, and still dealing with the fact that I just had like this massive breakup and all this stuff, and somewhere in there you kind of had to like dissociate from that stuff. You had to turn it off, because if you didn't, you're going to be distracted and you're going to do something stupid. What they don't, and those are the kinds of things that they try to cover whenever you see these stupid war movies, but they don't even scratch the surface, man. I mean, there's some really screwed up stuff that happens. I mean, I remember we had when we first got there, we lucked out because we got to stay in these cans. We call them cans, as housing units. That the Air Force had been staying in. Nah, freaking Air Force. These guys, when we first got there, we had this dinky little tent, and we didn't even have a picnic table. And we looked over at the Air Force, and they're sitting down there, seeing who can. They had this stockpile of lumber, and they're just building the world's longest freaking picnic table. And it was really irritating because we were like, why don't we have any of that stuff? So we ended up going over there. We thought about stealing one, but we were nice and we went and asked. But anyway, we were staying in these cans, and we were pretty much the only unit out there, a Marine unit, that I remember for probably about a month and a half, or that's what it felt like. No, it was. We were out there by ourselves for a good bit. It might not have been a month and a half, but we were waiting on the rest of the Marines to roll in. The Army was building up and everything else like that, but what ended up happening is we were living in these cans, and this other unit came in, and one of the Marines, I don't know what exactly happened. The story that I got was he had found out some information. His wife, or he was trying to make a purchase online, and he couldn't. He kept getting denied, which didn't make sense because you're out there in the combat zone, you're getting combat pay, and he kept getting denied, and he went to go check his account, and it was negative by a large amount. And the story I got was that this dude's wife had contacted him through email, and it's basically like, yo, dude, you signed over a general power of attorney. I've taken all your accounts and racked up every credit card. I signed over the house to my new boyfriend, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. Really messed up. He was a Lance Corporal. I don't know what his name was, but I do know that he decided to. He was overwhelmed, and he went into the restroom and the head, and put his weapon on 3-round burst, put it in his mouth and pull the trigger. And my squadron volunteered to go live there to relieve those Marines of the trauma that would understandably have been experienced right there. And the thing is that, you know, they try to clean things up as best as they can, but there's some things you just don't clean up. And that was what you experienced for the majority of the time that you were there. Like every time you get up in the morning to go shave and brush your teeth, you saw specks of stuff, and that's the way it was. And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm just trying to give you guys a reality check, so to speak, right? Things like that continued throughout the deployment. Just random crazy things, but there was a lot of good things that happened too. I mean, we got to see a Toby Keith concert for free. That's plus. Thanks, Toby Keith. But there was always, it was just like I said, the wild west. They still had minefields and crap out there, and you experienced a lot of things really fast. Our squadron was responsible for, anytime a Marine went down in the field, we did an angel run to go be the first ones to pick them up and bring them home. And every time they came back, we would do a ceremony to send them home right. And it was always a really humbling experience, and it was a real gut check every single time. So I don't know, we were out there, let's see, April, May, June, July, August, September. We came back in September. The entire time we were getting bombed, and on a daily basis. And you just kind of had to make up. That was the thing, is like you went to bed. I went to bed during the day for the most part because I worked night crew. And you just kind of went to bed having to accept that next one might be you, you know? I mean, that's no different than any, it is, but it isn't much different from, you know, you don't have a guarantee that you're going to wake up the next day, but I mean, at least here in the States, it's hopefully not because you got, you know, Johnny Rocket coming down. And so, you know, all these things happen in such a short period of time, and next thing I know, I'm back on a plane coming back to the States, and you know, things were just different, you know. I remember coming home to Miramar. My buddy Quinn and his wife were there, and they were really kind to me. They let me stay over at their place for a little while. I remember there were things that, you know, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but I remember that there were things that were different. Like lights seemed a little bit different. The fluorescent lights kind of bothered me in a weird way. Like it was just, they didn't irritate me. It was just like they were really bright to me. Doors slamming, or not even really slamming, but doors closing, making noise. They kind of made me jump a little bit. And that was something else. And then noises that I would hear. You know, I would just hear things that I normally wouldn't pay attention to. And, you know, I got back in September, and about 7 months later, I was on my way out of the Corps. And I just went straight into college, started school at the Art Institute out in Austin, and just started going on with my life. And the thing is that, I never thought much about it. I never thought that I needed to go talk to anybody. I just like, here's all this stuff that happened. Here's the rest of your life. You got to go. Because that's what, that's not different from anyone else, Things happen. Your car freaking breaks down. You still got to go do what you got to do, right? So I went to school, graduated in about 3.5 years. Stayed around the Austin area for a while. I was, I did contract work for some companies, various places, 3D modeling and some video editing work and stuff like that. I was never really crazy about it. I don't know why. Just somewhere over time, it wasn't what I was truly passionate about. What I really wanted to do was sculpture. And but I knew, that's you can't just depend on coming right out of college and making a living off of sculpture, right? So I went into the workforce, started working some call center jobs and things like that, and then working on my skills, and got laid off a few times. I started having some altercations with people, but I never really thought like much of it. Like, I was just, I just thought, maybe, I was just bullheaded, or I don't know. I never really thought too much of it, but I got laid off a few times. And then, I guess somewhere around 2016, I started having some problems. And it didn't make sense to me. Like, I was like, why are these things happening? I started having these issues. It started in the late summer of 2016. I started having these issues, like, where if I went to the grocery store, what would normally take me like 15 to 20 minutes to go shopping at H-E-B there off of I-35 in Palmer, would take me like 45 minutes to an hour. I started having trouble where I couldn't even I had to start going later and later in the day because I was getting overstimulated by like everything that was going on. Like, too many people around me and all that stuff. I don't know why. It was like, it just started freaking me out. And I was like, whenever it would do that, I would like have to stop my grocery cart and then just wait until whatever was going on passed, and I'd keep going. And you would think that at that point I would be like, okay, hey dude, you remember that place called Afghanistan that you went to? Maybe you should go down and talk to somebody at the VA. But no, not me. No, I didn't do that. So I went on from that. I started having other problems where, like, I developed like this speech impediment, and I never had a problem talking before. I clearly don't have a problem talking right now, but like, I would just start stumbling over words for absolutely no reason. At the time, I had this little white car, and I would get distracted. Like, I remember, like, I must have hit like a butterfly or some little bug or something that left a little red spot on my white car. And that little red speck would always bother me. Like, I would have to try to rub it out. It bothered me a lot because it reminded me of the head where that guy had taken his life, And so that happened. I ended up getting a job at eBay, And I was on my like last week of training. But throughout the training period, I started having like these issues where I'd be sitting there and I would just, like, in my mind, I was just starting to freak out for no reason. Like, I'd have to get up and walk outside just to go calm myself down. Like, what in the world is going on? So that continued until about November of 2016. The good thing is that shortly before that, I had quit smoking. And I'd smoked for like 12 years, and I'm gonna tell you, man, I've always believed in God, right? And I've always followed Him. And I remember I told Him, God, I cannot quit smoking, and I'm gonna need your help. 2 days later after that, it was like 2 or 3 days later, I went to go smoke a cigarette, and I felt like I was gonna have a freaking heart attack. September 17th of 2016 was the last day I ever smoked a cigarette in my life. God deals with me like that. And so if you ask Him anything, be ready, because he's gonna take you up on it. But anyway, so I had all these issues going on, and I didn't know what to do. I still didn't go to see anybody. I had started having these for whatever, these thoughts that would come to my head, kind of like whenever I would go to bed out there in Afghanistan, like this might be it, you know. And I would have these thoughts like, this might be it. This might, you might die tomorrow. You might die. Something. That wasn't normal, you know. And I wasn't suicidal. I'd never been suicidal in my life, whatever. So I didn't know what was going on, and for whatever reason, I refused to go down to the VA to deal with it. And then in November, after Thanksgiving weekend, my brothers and I, we went out to the Fast Eddie's pool hall down in Beaumont, Texas. And it was a good time, man. It was like the first time in a long time I hung out with my brothers. My youngest brother had a new girlfriend, who is now his wife, my lovely sister-in-law, who just completed her master's degree. Congratulations. We ended up coming out of the pool hall. My brother, I was going to be heading back to Austin. For whatever reason, my brother pulled around and he wanted to talk to me for a second, and just asked me a couple questions. And I was, I stepped out of the car, and I was kind of standing with the door open, in between it, and he had his truck pulled around. And we were just talking, chit-chatting about whatever. And then while we're doing that, this guy comes walking out with a couple people, and he's like yelling something, and I don't know, I don't remember exactly what was going on. He was just mad about something. But the thing was, is like every time he would talk, it would distract me, and or every time I would try to talk, he would start yelling for whatever reason. And my brother took notice of it, and he looked over to this guy and he's like, "Hey, why don't you do something or shut up, you freaking whatever." And this guy looks over and he's like, "What did you say to me?" And it was, yeah. And of course, that led to my brother hopping down out of the truck and being like, "Come on, mother, whatever," And something, for whatever reason, something told me, "Hey, you need to get ready. Something's about to happen." And so my brother's walking out there, and there's this guy that's being an idiot. And he's like, "You know what? I got something for you." And I knew exactly what was about to happen. And I saw it before it ever even happened. Like, I knew exactly what he was going to do. And I watched it like on replay as he was doing it. He just climbed up into his truck, reached over the back seat, comes down with the pistol still in the holster, points it at my brother. My brother's right in front of me. Not to mention the fact that my other brother had walked behind me and gotten into his car. And there I was in this situation where I'm the oldest brother. My middle brother is right here. I'm stuck behind this car. I'm supposed to be my brother's keeper. And if I make a move, I don't know what's going to happen. The only thing I could do was yell, man. And that's what I did. I just yelled. I called 911 and the cops came out. And they ended up letting this dude go. And it really made me mad. And I walked over to the cop and I was like, hey, why'd you let this dude go? He just pulled a gun on us, dude. And he's like, what? There was a gun? I was like, really? You seriously, dude? And he was like, either you're telling me one or two things. Your dispatcher didn't do their job, or you know this dude. I don't know which it was. And he was like, well, I was like, you cannot. I've never been disrespectful towards a police officer before. And I just went off on this dude. I was like, you gotta be effing kidding me. I was like, I didn't serve my country. You go out to get shot at every freaking day for all this time just to come home for you to act like a freaking idiot and let this guy with a gun freaking run away. And then, and the guy, this cop had the audacity. He says, oh, you were in the service. And I was like, yeah. He says, what branch? And he says, I said, I was in the Marine Corps. And he was like, oh yeah, so was I. I was like, good. You ought to know better, you know? And that, it made me so freaking mad, dude. And so I ended up going back to, Austin, going back to work. You would have thought that at that point I would have gone down and talked to somebody, but I didn't. And I went back to work and I got on a phone call with a man. For some reason, he called in. He was asking something about his account, and we got to talking about the military. And he says, "Well, my name's Richard. My original name's Richard." And he says, "Well, I was a naval aviator." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He says, "Listen, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm 80 years old, and look, son, you gotta keep things simple. You gotta take care of yourself." And I don't even know why this guy just said that to me, And so, I remember he said that, and I got off the phone, and I was just like looking out the window. And I went and told my boss, I was like, look, I gotta go. I gotta go talk to somebody. Because whatever happened at that moment, whenever that guy pulled a gun on us, it took like whatever had been building up all that time, and it just cracked it. And I couldn't think, man. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't do anything, man. I was flipping out. Couldn't sleep. It was rough. And the funny thing is like I tried to deal, like the previous summer I had for whatever reason I'd heard that there was groups in Austin that equestrian groups where you could go work with horses and stuff. to like manage stress and things like that. And like I tried to like, I guess maybe somewhere subconsciously I was thinking, you know, hey, I needed to get myself help or something. I don't know. But I started working with horses. I really enjoyed it. But I left eBay because I told them, look, I don't know what's going on. I got to figure something out. Went to work for this little horse farm for a little bit. A little bit, I mean like a week. I realized that was way more stress than I needed at the moment. And then I remembered that there was this art foundry that I'd been applying to for, I don't know, the past like 2 years. And I started applying there because a friend of mine, Brian, had told me that you could make bronze art with 3D printers. And so I searched it out and found out that there was this foundry right there in Bastrop. And so I'd applied there a couple of times, but I never heard anything from them. And so for whatever reason, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go check this place out. And I just happened to go down there one day whenever the owner was there. I sat down and talked with him for a while and put in an application. And on the way home, they called me and they were like, hey, we have this project that we want to do. Could you do this or could you do that? And they ended up bringing me on like a temporary basis just to try and test out. They made an entire position for me, just out of the blue. And it was like just this door just opened. And during this time, I'd been going to counseling. It was helping a little, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think that it was ever really enough. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it was just things were, you know, I was talking to somebody and things kind of got okay, and I was trying to learn how to manage things, but then I finally went for an evaluation with a psychologist, and you know, they sat down and she talked to me about the things that were going on. She said, honey, you have post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is going to be for the rest of your life. And they diagnosed me as 70% disabled. And I took it really freaking hard, man. And the reason why is because, not that I thought that I was beyond it or anything like that. It was just, I worked on airplanes, man. I worked on airplanes. That's what I did. And I just didn't think of, I guess part of me thought that the guys who needed help with that, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful by saying this, the guys that should have that sort of therapy and stuff like that offered to them the most were not me. That they were the guys that were kicking down the doors. That they were the guys that were running around taking care of business. The tip of the spear. Not me. Not Corporal Kimball back in the rear, you know. And so I don't know. That got dropped on me, and I took it really hard. And then about, I don't know, like 3 weeks later, for whatever reason, I would eat lunch at the office, and so whenever the people would leave, they would lock the door behind them. Well, this particular day, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go out for lunch. And So they said, okay, well, we'll leave it unlocked. And I remember I stepped out of the office and then I forgot something. And I walked back in there, and then I got distracted by something and I started fiddling. And next thing I know, I hear the door open. And I hear this lady come in and she says, hello. And so I walk out, and there's my mother-in-law and my wife. I don't know why things worked out that way. They just did, and I don't believe in coincidence, you know. And so there they were, and here's this woman that just walked right into my life. And so I continued working down at the foundry for a while, and now I had a job and a girlfriend, and things started getting a little difficult for me. Sorry, the sun's like crazy, but things started getting a little difficult. I started having problems at the office. I started interpreting some of the things that were said to me as aggression. And I remember this guy, the guy that I worked for, I got into a pretty heated discussion with him, because I was having trouble. Like, I couldn't remember things. I had a hard time concentrating. I'd have to write things down. I had to like really focus to write things down. I couldn't focus on nothing, man. And I remember I was sitting in this guy's office, and they kept telling me that I was like, I would do everything I could to do a good job, and it was like it was never enough. And they would accuse me of like wasting time, things like that. And this guy had the balls to tell me, I'm sitting in his office, and he's like, hey, I know you're probably, you know, this, probably that, and referring to my PTSD, because I was open with him about it. I didn't have to tell him that I had it, but it made me so freaking mad. I was sitting there, you know, he says this to me, and I just started looking around his office, and he said, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I'm looking for the psychology degree that you supposedly have to be able to talk to me like this. And then they got mad, and they were like, I think you need to take a few days. So I came back a few days later, and I said, you know what, I don't need to be having this kind of trouble at my job. And so I stepped away from it. I really enjoyed that job, man. I was making giant monuments on 3D printers, all sorts of stuff. And on top of that, that was where I met my wife. And I ended up going back to school, went to Texas State for a year. And I thought, you know, maybe I just need to chill out and do something, keep it simple, go to school for a little while, and just kind of get my mind right, you know. And so I went, and things were all right, I guess. I was studying sculpture, but I was also learning some more technical things, learning how to use CAD and all that stuff. And I don't know, I started having problems with my roommates. It was just like a downward spiral. I never had any problems with like alcohol or anything like that. I never had those vices. I just would get frustrated because I had trouble communicating with people, and it was like I felt like whatever they were saying to me was like they were just treating me like I was a freaking invalid or something, you know. And I didn't know what to do. I was freaking out. And I had this, all the while I had this woman who loved me, who cared deeply about me. And I felt like I was this freak, man, and I pushed her away. And I ran. And I know she didn't understand. And I ran out to Kerrville, Texas, of all places. And the reason why is because they had a VA hospital out there, and they had a place housing on the VA premises. And so I just moved out there for a year. Got a job working on a flower farm, Wild Seed Farms, off of 290, going into Fredericksburg. If you're ever out there in the spring, stop by and see the poppies. And I guess probably maybe 4 or 5 months later, she and I got reconnected. And a few months after that, we were married. The reason I'm telling you this stuff is because whenever you have these kinds of things going on, if you don't get them squared away, if you just run from them, they're going to cause a lot of problems, and they have caused a lot of problems. But they're not impossible to tackle. But the thing is that you have to tackle them. There's a lot of stuff that happens to people. Post-traumatic stress disorder is not unique to people in the military. It happens to all sorts of people that are victims of rape, people that are victims of abuse, neglect, any number of things. And you can't, there's no one size fits all diagnosis for it. And a lot of people, they say, "Oh, just get over it," and that's what people try to do. But the thing is that if you don't ever actually deal with the issue, you're going to carry it around with you wherever you go. And that's what I did. And the thing is that I tried to deal with it myself. But the things I was doing was, it wasn't working. And so it caused a lot of problems for me. And I wound up at this point where I had so much noise going on in my head all the time that it was causing too many issues. And whenever it makes relationships difficult. Whenever you have two personalities coming together, they have their own history, their own everything. You got two completely different people that are trying to relate to one another. Makes it difficult. But the thing is that if you don't tackle it appropriately, it's going to get out of hand, and you can keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off as long as you want to, but eventually something's going to break. And so that's kind of how things went for me for a long while. And then I don't know, over this entire period of time, I was, I never gave up on my faith or anything like that. And God's always been very real to me, and I don't know why he allowed me to go through these things other than to teach me. And to show me the the depths that people are in sometimes, you know. You can't, how do you understand how another person feels without looking into your own self, you know? If that makes any sense. But what I found was I'd be on my knees every night and just praying, you know, God, help me with this. What, take this stuff out of me. I can't handle it. And this went on for like a year and a half, 2 years after I was diagnosed. And I mean, it was really seriously a hard thing for me. And it's still a challenge. I was just talking to my therapist today. But the thing is that you can try and self-diagnose yourself, and you can try and, you know, read all the self-help books that you want to. You can go to all the therapy sessions that you want to, but at the end of the day, those things may help, but you still have to deal with the bottom issue, which is that you're hurt. There's trauma, and you have to deal with things. You just have to be healed. But no drug in the world is going to heal you. No drug in the world can heal your mind. And all these things, they cause problems with the mind. You know, somebody that's dealing with PTSD, they are dealing with the stresses that happen there. You have tons of fragmented thoughts because so much stuff happens at one time that you don't have time to process it. And your body remembers. Your body experienced all of it. It remembers everything. Your body, the sunlight coming into your body has to digest that. I don't know if any of you ever thought about that, but you do. So every single thing, every experience, you absorb it like a sponge. I mean, just look at kids. Look at how kids, they pick up everything, right? Our bodies do that too. And the thing is that if you are in a position where you're just absorbing so much toxic stuff, it's got to go somewhere. And if you can try and store it up as much as you want to, but eventually it's going to come out in some form or fashion. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how strong you think you are. And so I found myself the past, I guess like 4 nights ago, you know, I made a lot of progress, and things have gotten a lot better. I still had a lot of noise in my head, you know. And then the other night, on Saturday night, I'd gone to bed, and earlier that morning, I guess it would have been Sunday morning, somewhere around 2:30, 3 o'clock, I got, something woke me up. I said, hey, you need to pray. And I said, okay. So I got down and I prayed. I didn't think anything of it. I got back up and went back to bed. And then all of a sudden, it was like this presence came into the room. I've never felt anything like it in my life whatsoever. And it just kind of fell on me like the only way I can describe it is like this blanket. And it was like warm. And there was this voice, and it says, don't worry about anything. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to take care of it all. And I was like, okay, this is weird. So I got up the next morning, went to church, and I'm sitting there in the praise and worship, and you know, the first song was about being delivered. I was like, okay. The next song was about freedom from chains and bondage and all this other stuff, and I was like, all right. Well, both of these times I get this pull in me to go down to the altar. And this saying, come down to the altar and I will take care of it. Just step out in faith. And I was like, maybe this is just something in my head, So maybe after like the next song or so, I'll go up there, maybe. And then all of a sudden, this man walks up to me, Brother Joe. He was an ex-Bandito. He was in the Banditos motorcycle club. He was a pretty scary dude back in his day. Been to prison, all sorts of stuff. Now he runs this motorcycle ministry, and those are the people that he helps out. But anyway, he walks over to me out of nowhere, and he says, "Hey, man, you mind if I pray with you down at the altar?" The Spirit just put it on me to come speak to you. And I looked over at him and I was like, I wish you would, man. I really wish you would. You have no idea what's going on with me. And he said, let's go. And so I go down the altar and just get down there, and he says, hey, I'm just going to pray. All right? And I said, okay. And he starts praying over me, and then he starts saying, he says, the Lord says, I've seen you on your knees night and day. And I've heard your prayers. And I'm going to deliver you. I'm going to make the crooked paths in your life straight. And I'm going to do something new in your life. And this guy starts telling me, the tormenting thoughts that you've got going on, they're going to be gone. You're going to be delivered. They're going to eat you up inside if you don't. And I don't know what happened there, man. Like, I went down there, and in 5 minutes, some guy that, I know who he is, but he had no reason to know anything that was going on with me. And he, in 5 minutes, told me pretty much every single thing that was going on. And I'm not sure what happened there, but whenever I left that altar, all the stuff that was in here, all the noise, everything that had been going on with me for the past 2 years. I mean, let's be real. Since 2009, whenever I was on deployment, all that stuff, all the noise and all the frustration and everything, it was gone. It was just gone, and it hasn't come back. I mean, we're talking, it's Wednesday now. And so, here I am. I'm making good on my promise to God. I told him that if he delivered me from this, I'm going to tell people. I don't know who it's for. But I do hope that it helps somebody. And what I want to say next is, God cares about you, man. He's real. He's seriously real. And he cares about every single last aspect of your life. I can look back now and I see like all these paths that have led me to here right now. And I see his hand on every single spot. And that's not just like me just like assigning meaning to something. It's the truth, man. I want to read something to you. Whenever Jesus came into his ministry, he says, he went up to the temple in Nazareth, and they delivered a scroll to him, and he fulfilled this prophecy out of the book of Isaiah. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." And he closed the book, and he gave it back to the priest, and he sat down, and he said to them, "This day this scripture is fulfilled in your ears." Listen, I don't know what's going on with anyone here. Everybody's got their issues. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter the wrongs that you've done. I mean, they matter, but there's not anything that you can't be forgiven of. There's not any single thing that you can't be redeemed from. And people blame God for all sorts of things. The reality is that he's been the one that's holding you up your entire life. And you can believe me now, or you can believe me later. And trust me, you don't want to have to believe me later. I carried a lot of this stuff around because I was ashamed of things. And I had no reason to be ashamed of the fact that I served my country. There is no reason for it. But some people, you experience traumas. I mean, I can't imagine someone who's been through worse things like, a rape or physical assault and abuse and things like that. You didn't ask for those things. And it's terrible. And you are right in your hurt. And I can't walk in your shoes. And all I can do is tell you that there is hope, and that shame that you carry around with you, you don't have to carry it. You don't have to carry it. God will take it from you. You just got to turn from it. You got to give it up to him. And I know it's not going to be easy, but healing is possible. But the only way that it's possible is that you got to give it up. Things happen in the past to you, and if you don't deal with them, they're going to affect everything that happens in your future. And you have a choice every single day whenever you get up to either choose death or you choose life. And there are multiple ways to die before you're in the grave. You can sit around and you can walk around the rest of your life thinking that you're okay. And that's what people tend to do. The trauma happens to them and they wear a mask. Something else happens to them, they put on another mask. And before you know it, you got thousands of masks, so to speak. And those are the things that you look through whenever you run into people. And those are the ways that you deal with problems. And it's not because you're like a bad person. It's because you're trying to heal yourself. But the thing is that you didn't make you. God made you. He made you in his image. And the only person who can fix you from down in your soul is the one that made you. So, for my fellow veterans, I hope that this landed on good ground, and that maybe something out of this is helpful. I don't know what you're going through, but there is hope, and there's hope in God, and there's hope in Jesus. And he died for your sins, and he will heal you. I know it firsthand. And take it one day at a time. Don't be so hard on yourselves. Don't. There's so much crazy stuff going on in this world. Don't be so hard on yourselves. God loves you. I love you. Hope y'all have a good day. Thanks for listening. All right. Take care, people.